The revolving doors spun slowly, releasing a burst of humid Carolina air into the marble-lit lobby of the Meridian Heights. It was just past noon, and the energy inside the hotel was calm, too calm for what was about to happen. A few guests lounged near the indoor fountain, sipping citrus water and scrolling aimlessly. Behind the check-in desk, Gregory Vance adjusted his tie and admired his reflection in the polished glass divider. Control, as always, was his comfort zone. He didn't notice her at first. Danielle Graves entered alone, carrying nothing but a narrow black folder and the kind of presence that made space adjust to her. She didn't look around, didn't scan for anyone. Her pace was measured, too measured. It wasn't arrogance, it was ownership. Gregory looked up mid-keystroke. His eyes narrowed just slightly. She wasn't what he expected. No team, no press, no protocol flair, just a woman in a sharp charcoal suit and matte heels, walking like she had nothing to prove. Vanessa Cole saw her first. She stiffened behind the desk, glancing toward the reservation terminal, then to Gregory. He hadn't said a word, but the set of his jaw spoke volumes. Danielle stopped 3 feet from the counter. She didn't smile. She didn't announce herself. She simply placed the folder down and opened it. A single access card rested beside a printed itinerary, both embossed with executive clearance stamps. Gregory didn't touch them. "Ma'am," he said finally, his voice neutral but just a shade too firm. "This section is reserved for hotel leadership and confirmed clients. Are you here for someone?" Danielle tilted her head, just slightly. She didn't answer the question. Instead, she tapped once on the folder's edge. Lightly. The motion was precise, intentional, meant to be noticed. Eli Patel, standing 2 stations over, paused mid-typing. He knew the name, knew the code attached to the reservation, and knew Gregory hadn't scanned anything yet. Tatiana Cruz, watching from her concierge station, felt the room begin to shift. Subtly, like the first second before a tremor. Because Danielle wasn't here by chance, and she wasn't here for anyone. She was here for the building itself. Gregory didn't scan the card, didn't check the screen. He just stood a little taller, voice turning colder. "There's been confusion with credentials before. I'll need to verify this with upper management." Danielle didn't move. Her eyes didn't flinch. Her silence made more noise than any objection. Vanessa shifted her weight, fingers trembling near the keyboard. She'd seen the booking this morning. Executive access. Pre-cleared, marked private authority. But Gregory wasn't stalling out of caution. He was asserting himself. Tatiana caught Danielle's subtle glance across the lobby. 1 second. No longer. She reached below her desk and tapped a silent signal into the staff comms. Internal flag. Exec override watch. Gregory opened a drawer and produced a brushed steel box, used rarely, only in suspected fraud. Still not scanning the card, he dropped it inside with a hollow metallic note, then locked the lid. Danielle didn't protest. Behind her, 2 guests slowed their steps. One looked up from a phone. Another lingered near the elevators, sensing something off. Gregory turned to Vanessa, loud enough for the concierge to hear. "These high-level mix-ups happen more than you think. Let's not rush judgment." Eli froze. Tatiana had heard enough. She stepped forward from her station and addressed Danielle directly. "Your suite is ready. Penthouse. Credentials active. It's been in the system since last Friday." Gregory cut her off. "Then the system's wrong." Now the lobby heard it. The shift from policy to ego. Vanessa blinked. Her monitor confirmed the reservation, flagged top priority from corporate. And yet Gregory's hand hovered over the locked box like it meant something more. Danielle tapped her phone once. 3 blocks away, Marcus Wynn saw the alert. Within seconds, systems across Meridian Heights began syncing. Access logs, camera feeds, personnel IDs, ready for escalation. This wasn't the first time Danielle had been told she didn't belong. It would be the last time someone tried it without consequences. Marcus Wynn didn't wait for confirmation. As soon as the override ping hit his tablet, he triggered the contingency stack built months ago. Meridian's back-end framework wasn't just for operational metrics. It was a live network of accountability protocols, armed for moments exactly like this. He routed system control through a secured corporate channel, bypassing front desk input. Within seconds, Danielle's access logs lit green across every internal tier. The hotel didn't need permission. It needed alignment. Inside the lobby, the temperature didn't change, but the tension did. Tatiana stood motionless, eyes fixed not on Gregory, but on the ripple forming around him. Guests who'd once been preoccupied were now alert. A woman near the gift kiosk angled her phone slightly toward the desk. A man waiting for an Uber stepped back inside, sensing something off. The air wasn't confrontational. It was coiled, waiting for a direction. Gregory clicked his pen, an unconscious tick when control slipped from his grip. "I'll be needing confirmation from corporate before anything escalates," he said, tone sharpened. He didn't realize escalation had already begun. His terminal flickered, then paused, then froze entirely. A new banner appeared on screen in quiet gray font. Executive override engaged. Verification not required. Eli read it and stepped back from his station. This wasn't a discussion anymore. It was a record. Vanessa scanned the room. Her instincts told her to step away, but her ethics kept her grounded. She saw Danielle's calm as more than confidence. It was control, exercised with precision. No panic, no raised voice. Just pressure, layered slowly. Her presence didn't demand respect. It revealed who refused to give it without invitation. That's what made people like Gregory dangerous. Not incompetence. Willful blindness disguised as leadership. In the command suite, Marcus activated Phase 2. Every access denial, every command Gregory had issued in the last 10 minutes was now marked for review. Server timestamps, badge entry logs, staff action delays. All bundled into a real-time audit stream syncing live with corporate. Not for investigation later, for accountability now. Danielle's silence wasn't empty. It was filled with evidence, already building its own narrative. Gregory tried the keyboard again. Nothing. The system now recognized him only as limited staff role. His override ability was locked. No manual reset, no call-in key. He looked at Tatiana as if she'd betrayed him, but she didn't flinch. "Your terminal isn't authorized to process that request," she said flatly, repeating the exact language from the hotel's executive protocol manual. It wasn't a confrontation. It was a conclusion. Danielle finally spoke. Her voice was soft but absolute. "The card wasn't for verification," she said. "It was a courtesy." Then she walked behind the desk, through the staff gate Gregory had once guarded like a drawbridge. No one stopped her. Not Vanessa, not Eli, and especially not Tatiana. Because control wasn't being taken. It was being returned to where it belonged. In the Skybridge command center across town, Marcus watched the override propagate through the staff network. More alerts were triggering now. Flagged complaints long buried, names assigned, histories resurfaced. Danielle didn't just enter a hotel that day. She walked into a legacy built on silent denial and flipped every switch in the system that had allowed it to persist. The lobby hadn't erupted. It had awakened. The message on Gregory's screen shifted again. Administrative lockdown active. Just below, in smaller type. Triggered by executive authority. Session recorded. His fingers froze mid-motion. He wasn't locked out of a terminal. He was being documented. Behind him, Eli quietly stepped back from the main desk and moved toward the concierge station. There was no announcement, no gesture, just reallocation, an instinctive maneuver away from collapsing control. Danielle walked with quiet finality. No reaction to Gregory, no glance back. She didn't posture. She didn't need to. Her steps, slow and deliberate, moved with weight that no badge or position could duplicate. Tatiana fell into pace beside her, silent but unmistakable. Her proximity changed the geometry of the lobby. Danielle no longer stood alone. She stood, recognized. Around them, silence gathered density. The casual hum of movement stilled. One man leaned against a pillar, phone raised halfway. A pair of women at the bar stopped mid-laugh, eyes locked on the front desk. This wasn't tension. It was exposure. A slow revealing of what power looks like when it doesn't beg to be noticed. Gregory tried to regain footing. "We're happy to make things right," he said, voice thinner now. "Clearly a mix-up in the system. These things happen." Tatiana's tone stayed even. "The system didn't make a mistake. It issued 3 confirmations. You bypassed all of them." She wasn't making an argument. She was laying down a file path. Vanessa didn't need more convincing. The log was open. Danielle Graves, executive override, time-stamped entry, compliance tag live. A blinking update followed. Legal recording synced. She didn't turn the monitor for anyone to see. She didn't need to. Eli's glance told her everything. The staff knew what this was. They'd always known. They just hadn't been permitted to say it out loud. Danielle opened her folder once more and unfolded a single document. No theatrics, no performance. The header read, "Immediate authorization of internal review. Tier 1 executive command." Marcus had already mirrored it into the audit network. It wasn't an order. It was a mirror held to the structure. And now, that structure had to look back. Gregory's hands hovered near the steel lockbox, then fell away. He looked at it like it was absurd now. The object that had symbolized gatekeeping only minutes ago now sat inert, a relic of assumed control. Around him, phones were recording, quietly, unobtrusively. Not for drama, for accuracy. If the Meridian marketed transparency, it was time to see how much truth its glass walls could reflect. Tatiana turned calmly to Danielle. "Do you want to go to your suite or to control?" Danielle didn't hesitate. Control. She didn't slow down, didn't raise her voice, just moved forward, flanked by silence and compliance. Behind her, Gregory remained at the desk, surrounded by staff who no longer looked to him for direction. The lobby had stopped watching her. It had started listening to her. In the operations control room 2 floors below, the shift was already underway. Marcus expanded the audit feed to include staff behavior during override incidents. Every access delay, every unacknowledged credential, every skipped verification step, cross-referenced, time-stamped, visible. Danielle didn't need a microphone or a statement. She had the logs, and the logs were speaking fluently. Gregory paced behind the front desk now, eyes darting between terminals that no longer responded to his credentials. The screen in front of him flashed red. Privileges suspended. Contact corporate oversight. He tried the manual override panel. Nothing. He looked to Vanessa, then Eli. Both had retreated subtly. Their focus shifted to guest assistants. He wasn't fired, but the room had moved on without him. Guests weren't whispering anymore. A woman by the water feature muttered something about corporate negligence, shaking her head. A man in business casual recorded a quiet voiceover for his phone camera. "This isn't a misunderstanding. This is culture under review." It wasn't Danielle's presence that ignited attention. It was Gregory's resistance that confirmed the rot. Vanessa pulled up the notification from corporate HR, internal audit proceeding, front desk flagged, staff expected to comply. She closed the window and started assisting a guest checking in with zero hesitation. Protocols were clear now. Danielle didn't need to command. She had already rerouted the current. Back in the lobby, Tatiana approached the guest services podium, issuing short directives to reroute check-ins, disable the override block, and push notifications to all department heads. No one questioned her authority. Gregory stood feet away, silenced not by force, but by relevance. His words no longer carried the weight of enforcement. They were just noise in a system that had outgrown him. Danielle entered the executive control suite. Marcus's face flickered on the screen, calm but efficient. "You're synced. Reports live. We've tagged 4 flagged patterns already. Do you want staged suspensions or full lockdown on repeat offenders?" Danielle didn't flinch. "Stage it. But begin pulling data now. If we wait for consensus, we reward silence." Tatiana's staff update reached all employee devices at once. Audit in progress. Department leads report to control level. Across the hotel, staff began shifting course. Maintenance leads rerouted access. Housekeeping requested security protocol reviews. The hierarchy that had shaped their silence had begun to dissolve under scrutiny. Not all at once, but visibly. Gregory stood alone at the desk, staring at the locked box like it might give him a last word. But it remained cold and quiet, and the eyes that once deferred to him now looked past him. He wasn't the voice of policy anymore. He was its footnote. Danielle stood at the center of the executive suite's glass-walled conference room as the first wave of data came in. Marcus had already flagged 5 employee records showing consistent obstruction patterns, buried complaints, access denial overrides, selective enforcement logs. Gregory's name was on 3, not as a suspect, but as a trend. The system wasn't malfunctioning. It was functioning exactly how he'd shaped it. Outside the room, the hotel continued to shift. Department heads filed toward the upper levels in silence. No announcements, just the sound of restructured authority echoing through marble corridors. Every unspoken rule, the ones that rewarded deference over integrity, was beginning to collapse under the weight of visibility. The leadership that once went unquestioned was now being investigated line by line. Vanessa received a system alert. Field complaint retrieval activated. Cross-property sync in progress. She blinked at the screen. This wasn't isolated. The software was pulling complaint patterns from other Meridian locations. What started as a lobby standoff was now a network-wide integrity test. Danielle wasn't auditing an incident. She was mapping a culture. In the security room, Tatiana watched footage of Gregory dismissing Danielle's credentials without review. The expression on his face was damning, not because it was aggressive, but because it was routine. That indifference, that casual authority, was the real liability. Tatiana didn't flinch. She flagged the clip, appended her annotation, pattern, not exception, and sent it to Marcus. Gregory remained at the front desk, posture tight, phone locked out. No messages, no incoming calls. The system had cut him off, efficiently, impersonally. Staff around him had recalibrated. Eli managed a tech request from the conference floor. Vanessa coordinated late checkouts. No one addressed him. He wasn't avoided. He was bypassed. Downstairs, the kitchen staff paused mid-shift to recheck their devices. One cook pointed out the audit alert. Another showed an old email they'd once reported but never heard back on. Now they weren't just recalling it, they were forwarding it directly to the compliance inbox. Not because someone told them to, because someone had finally made it matter. In the control suite, Danielle reviewed a new folder from Marcus. Non-action witnesses, flagged for interview. It wasn't punishment. It was exposure. Employees who watched discrimination unfold and did nothing were being documented. Not to accuse, but to understand who the system had trained to stay quiet. Danielle didn't need heroes. She needed truth. She looked up as Tatiana entered with a fresh stack of reports. Physical, annotated, time-stamped. Danielle didn't blink. "Add them to the live audit stream," she said. "I want the system to see itself in full." There was no press statement, no announcement, just a single order that made its way into every corner of the hotel. Nothing gets ignored again. By early afternoon, Meridian Heights was no longer operating under its usual rhythm. The systems still ran, check-ins processed, room service delivered, but the energy had shifted. There was no background hum of assumed order. There was tension now, not of fear, but of transition. Staff who once walked halls with practiced indifference now glanced at each other with cautious alignment. A new order wasn't being announced, it was being tested. Marcus expanded the audit parameters. Infractions across sister properties began surfacing, delayed escalations, missing harassment logs, unexplained transfers. Danielle reviewed them methodically, redlining not individuals but patterns. She wasn't interested in isolated failure. She was identifying what the system had been built to excuse. And this time, no one would be allowed to file it away under resolved internally. Gregory, still confined to the main desk area, received no updates. His badge pinged red at every door. His login credentials timed out. Even the staff radio in his breast pocket emitted nothing but static. He stood not as an accused, but as a symbol of what unchecked tenure had produced. A man surrounded by evidence but untouched by accountability for far too long. Downstairs, employee lounges turned into impromptu tribunals. Quiet murmurs became concrete statements. A night auditor forwarded a time-stamped incident from 4 months prior. A junior housekeeper offered notes translated by her cousin on a tablet borrowed from the admin desk. Danielle's email filled with screenshots, side-channel texts, even hand-drawn diagrams of department silencing tactics. The language of fear was unraveling. Tatiana coordinated the floor shift, but she wasn't giving orders. She was inviting statements. Not everyone stepped forward. Some watched, some waited. But even silence sounded different now. It wasn't disengagement, it was recalibration. For the first time, the choice not to act carried weight, and everyone felt it. Guests responded too. Some checked out early. Some left notes of support. One frequent corporate client emailed Danielle directly, "I've watched your properties operate from afar. This is the first time I've seen the claim of equity enforced in real time." No hashtags, no PR framing. Just a sentence that acknowledged what was now undeniable. This was a correction years overdue. In the regional office, alerts spread upward. 3 property managers were pulled into immediate review. Not because of Meridian Heights, but because the review uncovered echoes in their own houses. Danielle wasn't enforcing her will. She was enforcing the company's stated values and finally making them operational. Marcus forwarded a summary. "It's not an incident anymore," he wrote. "It's a signal." Danielle stood by the glass wall of the operations suite, watching as the hotel restructured itself, staff by staff, department by department. Not from fear of punishment, but from proximity to accountability. There were no banners, no slogans. Just a network of eyes opened, systems exposed, and a standard silently enforced in every badge denial, every access log, every skipped excuse. The architecture wasn't just physical anymore, it was ethical. By sundown, the name Danielle Graves no longer circulated as an abstract executive. It moved through Meridian Heights like a force of recalibration. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't made a speech. Yet the foundation had shifted under every person who once moved through the lobby thinking silence was safe. Her presence wasn't about ownership. It was about accountability. And now, everyone knew what that looked like when it walked in the door. Gregory's office was empty. Not raided, not dismantled, just abandoned by relevance. The final system message to his profile read, "Review in progress, temporary access suspended." There was no confrontation, no escort, just doors that didn't open anymore, screens that no longer recognized his name, and colleagues who no longer looked to him for direction. Vanessa stood outside the guest elevator with a new badge clipped to her shirt. Temporary team lead, pending permanent review. She hadn't asked for it. She'd earned it without ceremony. Her voice was steady as she guided a family to their room, but her eyes still carried the weight of what she'd witnessed. Not just one moment of denial, a pattern, finally seen, and not ignored. In the staff lounge, someone taped a handwritten note to the wall. It read, "We don't whisper anymore." Next to it, another appeared within the hour. "Power is what you protect when no one's watching." By the end of the night, the wall had become a message board. No official memo had authorized it. No manager had approved it. But no one removed it either. Danielle reviewed the final audit summary from Marcus. 3 terminations authorized, 5 under compliance review, 11 flagged for mandatory training. But the numbers weren't the point. The real metric was intangible, measured in how quickly silence stopped being the norm. In how many people stepped forward when they realized they wouldn't be punished for telling the truth. She didn't stay the night. The penthouse remained untouched. No flowers, no turn-down service, just a clean, silent space overlooking a city now adjusting to its own reflection. Danielle didn't need rest. She needed readiness, because this hotel was never the only one, and the next override would not be met with surprise. It would be expected. As she left through the service corridor, Tatiana handed her a final folder, updated training protocols, rewritten incident thresholds, and a page titled Non-Negotiables. Danielle signed without hesitation. These weren't policies. They were promises, backed by enforcement. And from now on, everyone would know exactly what happens when values aren't optional. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. Guests laughed. Valets moved with rehearsed ease. From a distance, Meridian Heights looked the same. But inside, the story had rewritten itself, without fanfare, without forgiveness, and without a single raised voice. Just consequence, finally delivered. To me, this story hit hard, not because of what happened, but because of how it happened. The quiet resistance, the calm refusal to back down. The way Danielle didn't demand power. She exercised it without apology. I've seen this dynamic play out in real life more times than I'd like to admit. Not just in hotels, but in boardrooms, offices, and everyday systems that pretend fairness while rewarding silence. That's why I wrote this. Not to dramatize injustice, but to name it. Not to offer a fantasy, but to imagine what it might look like if someone just once didn't step aside. If it resonates with you, don't just scroll past. Subscribe. Comment. Let's talk about the things we're usually told to ignore.